Welcome to the NNJR Trackside Classroom series on YouTube. My name's Bill Gilbert. I'm one of NNJR's chief instructors, and thank you for watching this online classroom. This session is designed for advanced and solo drivers and obviously instructors and so on. If you're a student driver, you may find some tips here, but also I may suggest some things that may not be the best fit for you. So just keep that in mind. So give me just a second to set up the PowerPoint here, and we'll dive right in. So today's topic: why drive this line? Now, if you're an experienced driver, you know the line around the track. You've probably been driving it that way for years, and you may not even think about why you drive it that way. Well, the purpose today is to get you to ask that question a little bit and think a little bit more about, why am I driving it the way I am? And maybe there's a few places where it's possible to make some tweaks that will improve things. As always, the disclaimer that this is the best information we can put together, but you use it at your own risk. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the types of corners, how to use those, and how to refine or adjust the line based on the track characteristics. And then we'll close with kind of the exceptions to the rule, a few places where there are actually variations on the line that you may want to think about. So let's start with the types of corners. And the type 1, 2, and 3 corner terminology comes from Alan Johnson, a book he wrote years ago called Driving in Competition. And type 1 is, he says, is the most important type, which in general is correct, because it leads onto a straightaway. And so in the left-hand turn that's in the diagram from his book here, you see the car braking in a straight line, trailing in, getting turned and getting on the gas to get onto the straight. And he breaks that corner down, as you see, into a whole series of steps. Now, type 2 corners are next most important. They end a straight and don't have a straight after them. And type 3 are corners between corners. So we'll go through examples of types 1 and 2 here. And then that doesn't tell you everything, because there are fast versus slow corners and kind of long versus short, or thought about another way, tight versus open. So we'll talk about all of those a little bit. Now, here's a variation on the Alan Johnson typology. And this comes from Dion von Moltke at Blaze, who spoke at our seminars for instructors and drivers in February of 2024. And he talked about exit speed corners, which are pretty similar to type 1, entry speed corners, which are kind of similar to type 2, and balanced corners. Now, and here's how he said we can tell them apart. He had a simple metric. Is the acceleration zone longer than the deceleration zone? In other words, if we're looking at a particular corner, are we going to be accelerating longer or braking longer? And if we're going to be accelerating longer, then it's an exit speed corner. If we're going to be decelerating longer, it's an entry speed corner. And if they're the same, it's balanced. So take your pick, but this is an easy metric to apply as well. But given that, how do we apply that, even if we label the corner? Well, exit speed corners are 80 or 90% of the corners that we drive. So you may think that all corners, are like this, but in fact, they're not. But on these corners, our objective is maximum acceleration onto the straightaway following. And how do we do that? Well, we do that with a late apex. And as the diagram here shows, the what we normally think of as the apex is labeled the clipping point, the red dot that's in this diagram right here. And notice that that if we were to draw a geometric apex here, it would be before that. And notice also that in this case, the slow point is before the apex. And this is an idea that Dion suggested, which makes lots of sense. In other words, what we're doing in this type of a corner is we're trying to get the car slowed down and turned as much as possible early so that we can open the steering and accelerate later. So that's how we think about type 1. We often think about most corners being like this because if we go to Watkins Glen as an example, almost all of the corners are type 1. And we can argue that that there's one entry speed and one balanced if we want, but the rest of the corners look like this. And the same's true at most tracks. So this is a way to think about type 1. To amplify or expand on that a little bit, here is an example of the David Murray radius equals speed. So in a simple diagram that you see here, thanks to Skip Barber, the dashed line is the large apex that we can, or the large circumference that we can draw here because it has the largest radius. We don't follow the inside of the track. We don't follow, which is R1 here. We don't follow the outside. Yeah, we draw the biggest circle we can. But it's not quite like that because here in the orange, with the blue car, we have that geometric line around the corner. But what we want with a late apex is, as I said, more turning and slowing in the early part and less in the latter part. So if you look at the line the red car is on, it's turned in later, it's turned more, and it's accelerating much harder at this point. And here's some math if you want to look at it. This comes from, again, the Going Faster book by Carl Lopez from the Skip Barber School. Here you see a corner that if the car corners at its maximum on a simple radius, it's 55 miles an hour. If we take the same corner and slow down a little bit more and turn a little bit more, we have to slow down to 53 miles an hour. But by the point of track out, we'll be at 57 miles an hour rather than 55. And we'll gain, in their example here, nearly 0.2 of a second down the following straightaway. So this is late apex, all the stuff we've all heard for years. It's all about exit speed. And it applies to, as I said, 80 or 90% of the corners we drive. But as we're thinking about a particular track, getting ready to go, let's think about which corners are which. So yes, this is lightning with a bunch of exit speed corners. Turn 1, obviously, is a fast corner that has the chute after it. Turn 4 has a chute after it. Turn 5 has the whole long back straight. Turn 7, and so on. The exit of the light bulb feeds onto the front straight. Those are all exit speed corners. So presumably they're going to be late apex, and we're going to want to optimize accordingly. However, if we look carefully, there are some entry speed corners at Lightning. The turn 2, we want to carry as much speed into as possible because there's nothing after it except another turn. Even if turn 2 and 3 are viewed as one turn, turn 4 comes right up. So there's nothing to be gained by accelerating at the end of 2 and 3. We want to accelerate at 4, but 2 and 3 we want to carry speed into. And likewise with the light bulb, and I'll say more about that in a moment, but that is such a long corner that it's both entry speed at the beginning and exit speed at the end. Oh, and you can do the same thing, if you like, for Lime Rock or Watkins Glen, or in fact, I encourage you to do just that. If we can get okay. Now, sorry about the PowerPoint going to sleep here. the if we turn around now and look at entrance speed corners or the type 2, our objective, as I've suggested, is to extend the preceding straightaway. Now, how do we do that? Well, we make an early apex. It's going to be before the geometric apex. And we're going to make the slow point after the apex. In other words, we're carrying as much speed into it. We don't care how fast we're going at the end of the corner. We care how fast we can get into the corner. And so you see on the diagram here again, the apex where we're going to clip the inside curb is early, and our slow point is well after that in this type of a corner. Now, in the Alan Johnson book, he points out that a classic setup is for a type 2 corner to lead to a type 1 corner. And you could say that entry speed leads to exit speed. So, and we find lots of examples of this. The light bulb I just talked about, it's a long corner. We carry as much speed as possible into it. And then we have time to get set up for a late apex to exit. Well, Big Bend is just the same way. It's a much faster entry than it is exit. The bus stop at Watkins Glen doesn't look the same, but that's an entry speed getting into it and an exit speed getting out. So is the keyhole at Mid-Ohio, and I'll leave it to you to find other examples. But this is a common setup, and if you think about these kinds of corners and how they work, they all have carry speed in to the beginning, collect the car up in the middle, and find a way to get a late apex and a fast exit as we get out. Now, there are adjustments we can make to corners. If it's a tighter corner, the line's going to be sharper, obviously. If the car has lots of acceleration, we're going to need to make that late apex ever so slightly later. But these tend to be more driven by the shape of the track than anything else. So things like camber and elevation and cresting, here's some examples at Lime Rock. We know there's lots of camber we have to deal with. We know that there's compression going up the uphill. There's a crest. Same thing at Lightning. And again, we can and should do this as we think about any track. Lightning has cresting at 5, obviously. It has compression going into 1, followed by cresting. Help and then hurt, right? We have adverse banking or camber in turn 7, just past the apex. We have positive banking and help in the light bulb. And these are pretty obvious, but if we think about those, they help us reinforce the right way to drive the track. Now, the line is generally the case. And in fact, Dion at our seminar said that his view is even the car he's in makes almost no difference to the line. Anywhere from a Miata to an IMSA car, he said, has pretty much the same line. And what I'm saying here doesn't violate that. I'm just pointing out that there are variations that some people like in some tracks that we drive. And so the 2 examples I'm going to use are Lime Rock and Lightning. Lime Rock, I actually have 2 examples. So as we approach Big Bend, we have one choice, to stay track left longer and then turn in around the 2. The other approach, the red line that you see here, starts at 4 or 5 and angles over to the first apex in Big Bend. And those are 2 variations. Some people like one, some people like the other. Turn 3 has maybe 3 variations at Lime Rock. Kind of the one most people drive is more like the red line here, or maybe somewhere between the red and the blue. The blue line kind of going all the way track right before turning in. Then there's the orange line here, which just hugs the left side of the track. And obviously there's trade-offs. In this case, the orange line's shorter, but has a sharper turn to it. And the blue line is much easier to drive, especially for beginners. but and maybe for particular cars. So this may be a case where the car may make some difference, but there are variations that do make sense. A light bulb has two major variations, which I think most of you are probably familiar with. The tighter line, which is blue here, which enters along the right side, kind of where the white paint is, and uses that as the beginning of the braking zone, and carries speed up into the top, let's call it the bottom third, or at most halfway up the light bulb, and then follows that around until coming down for the apex. The wide line here, sometimes referred to as the Miata line, starts much higher, starts close to track left, and not all the way to the top, but much higher up, and allows some people, they feel, to carry more speed, even though it's a longer line. So I'm not selling either one here. I'm just pointing out there are variations, and as an experienced driver, you should be aware of that and decide. Maybe you try both and decide what your preference is. So with all of that, let me just summarize briefly. We put this together so that you can think about approaching the line as a learning challenge. Why is the apex where it is? Why is the slow point where it is? Where is my wide open throttle point? And if you get used to thinking about the corner types and how you use that to drive the corners, that may help make you feel more comfortable with what you're doing. And of course, we always can make adjustments and see what happens, with the proviso that we need to keep it safe. We're in this, if we're experimenting, we're learning, and we're going to decide which one is better. But we're not going to do it to try to see how fast we can do one versus the other before we've practiced them. I have to remind people that Peter Krause said if we're doing an A versus B comparison, we have to practice A until we're good at it. That may take us half a session or even a session. We're going to have to practice B until we're good at it. Again, might take a half a session or a session. Then we can go out in a third session and run a few laps of A and a few laps of B, and have a real honest to goodness comparison of which is better for us on that particular day. So with that, let me thank you for watching this YouTube class. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to email me at the email you see on the screen, gilbert4@rcn.com. And of course, feel free to stop me anytime at the track and ask questions. I love to hear your feedback. With that, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you at the track soon.